Coming up on the show today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into some more chilling horror stories. And then we're going to take a look and preview our investigation at the haunted McCullough Museums and Gardens. Today is August 8th, 2024, and the Dark Forest is coming at you right now. Alright, first, we're gonna talk about the haunted McCullough Museums and Gardens. This place, it's an old historic memorial, supposedly built on an Indian burial ground. It is said to be reported haunted by the locals, so we're going to go up there and check that out. They apparently have some cool artifacts in the museum, and around the gardens, locals have reported hearing footsteps, whispers, and seeing ghostly figures in the middle of the day. So that's where we're going to go check out, see what we can find, see if we can catch anything, maybe film an abandoned house or two while we're up there. But can't wait to go up and check out that for you guys. That's going to be a good one. The haunted McCullough Museum and Gardens. So with that being said, we're going to jump right on into the horror stories. This is going to be a short podcast. Don't have many stories to talk about today, but we'll get through them all and go from there. Starting off with number 1 is the whispers in the wall. While renovating his new house, Tom discovered strange whispering noises coming from behind the walls. The whispers seemed to form words but were too garbled to understand. Desperate to find the source, Tom tore down the walls only to find a series of small sealed compartments with disturbing drawings of people in distress and old letters with cryptic messages. As he read the letters, the whispers grew louder and more urgent, and Tom felt an unseen force pushing him back. That night he felt the whispers crawl into his mind, leaving him in a constant state of paranoia and fear. The next one is the shadow in the mirror. Late one night, Emily noticed a dark shadow flickering behind her in the bathroom mirror. She turned around, but the room was empty. Each night the shadow grew clearer and seemed to mimic her movements. One evening she saw the shadow slowly raising its hand to the mirror, and in a chilling realization she realized it was reaching out for her. The next morning Emily was found, and her mirror showed nothing but a dark, vacant space. The next one is the lost key. Jake found an old rusted key buried in his backyard. Curious, he tried it in every lock in his house, but none of them fit. One stormy night he heard a faint knocking come from the basement. When he went down, the key fit perfectly into an old hidden door. Beyond the door was a room filled with old photographs of people who looked just like him but with terrified expressions. As Jake examined them, the room's temperature dropped, and he felt unseen hands clutching his ankles, pulling him into the darkness. The next one is the forgotten playground. A group of friends found an old, overgrown playground hidden deep in the woods. They laughed and played on the rusty swings and merry-go-round until they noticed strange handwritten signs that read, "Don't play here." Ignoring the signs, they took turns on the swings, but the mood changed as they felt watched. When they decided to leave, they realized that the path back was no longer visible and the playground seemed to stretch endlessly. Panic set in as the friends saw ghostly children on the equipment, their eyes hollow and pleading. By dawn, the friends were found disoriented and terrified, claiming they had seen visions of their own deaths in the playground. The next one is the empty cradle. Sarah's grandmother left her a beautiful old cradle with intricate carvings. When Sarah placed it in her baby's nursery, she noticed the cradle rocking on its own, even with no breeze in the room. At night, she would hear soft lullabies playing and see the cradle moving as if someone was gently rocking it. One night, she saw the cradle stop and a shadowy figure standing over it, whispering lullabies in a voice that was not her own. The next morning, her baby was gone and the cradle was found empty with strange tiny handprints along the edges. Wow. The next one is The Last Guest. A weary traveler arrived at a remote, run-down inn late one night. The innkeeper greeted him with a warm smile, though the inn was eerily empty. After paying for a room, the traveler went to bed, exhausted from his journey. In the middle of the night, he was awakened by a strange noise, a soft, rhythmic tapping that was coming from the hallway. When he opened his door to investigate, he found the innkeeper standing there, holding a candle and staring blankly ahead. "Is everything all right?" the traveler asked. The innkeeper didn't respond, but continued to tap his foot on the floor. The traveler grew uneasy and asked, "What's wrong?" The innkeeper finally turned to him with a vacant expression and said, "You're the last guest." Confused, the traveler tried to leave, but the innkeeper's face twisted into a horrifying grin. The traveler realized too late that the inn was a trap for lost souls, and as he tried to escape, he found himself drawn back inside by an unseen force. The next morning, the inn was empty once again, with no sign of the traveler, only a single ominous message scrawled in the dust: "The last guest never leaves." The next one is The Echoes of the Asylum. In a forgotten corner of town stood an abandoned asylum, its walls scarred by years of neglect. Local legends spoke of the tormented souls that still lingered within. A group of thrill seekers decided to explore the asylum despite the warnings. As they wandered through the decrepit halls, they heard faint whispers and cries for help. The deeper they ventured, the more intense the sounds became. At one point, they stumbled upon a room with old medical equipment and faded drawings on the walls. One of the group members, Mike, found an old ledger with names and dates. As he read the names aloud, the whispers grew louder, becoming a cacophony of anguished voices. The group was soon enveloped by an oppressive darkness, and they felt a cold, unseen presence closing in on them. Panicking, they rushed to find the exit, but found themselves disoriented as if the asylum's layout had changed. When they finally made it outside, they realized that Mike was missing. He was never seen again, and the asylum was sealed off shortly after with no explanation for his disappearance. Years later, during a renovation, workers found a hidden room containing hundreds of names and dates, each one matching the entries in Mike's ledger. The next one is The Cursed Paintings. The silent neighbor in a quiet suburban neighborhood, a young couple, Lisa and Mark. Hold on, sorry. Wrong one. The cursed painting is the one we're on now. A young artist named Laura found an old dusty painting in a flea market. It depicted a hauntingly beautiful woman with hollow eyes and an enigmatic smile. Laura was drawn to the painting and bought it. Fascinated by its eerie allure, she hung the painting in her studio and began to feel a strange presence. Shadows seemed to dance around her, and she heard whispering voices in the stillness. The more time she spent with the painting, the more she felt as it was influencing her work, driving her to create dark and unsettling pieces. One night, Laura awoke to find the painting missing. Panicking, she searched her studio but couldn't find it. The next day, the painting reappeared in the exact spot where it had been, but now the woman's eyes seemed to follow her with a predatory gleam. Desperate, Laura decided to get rid of the painting. She tried to burn it, but the flames extinguished themselves before it could be destroyed. When she finally managed to throw it away, she found it back in her studio the next morning, now with a new addition, a blood-red message scrawled across the canvas. You now belong to me. The next one is A Silent Neighbor. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a young couple, Lisa and Mark, moved into a charming house next door to a seemingly pleasant elderly couple. The neighbors were always polite but spoke very little. Despite their reserved nature, Lisa and Mark felt an odd sense of unease around them. One evening, Lisa noticed something strange while gardening. She saw the elderly couple standing at their windows, staring intently at her. Their faces were expressionless and they never blinked. She tried to ignore it, attributing it to their peculiar behavior. As days passed, the couple's behavior grew more erratic. They would often appear at the window at odd hours, always watching Lisa and Mark. One night, Lisa heard a faint knocking at their door, but found no one when she opened it. The next morning, the couple's house was completely abandoned. The windows were dark and there was no sign of their belongings. Lisa and Mark learned from the neighbors that the elderly couple had been living there for decades, but no one had ever seen them leave. It turned out that their previous home had also been abandoned under similar circumstances, leaving the new occupants puzzled and disturbed. And then the final one is The Forgotten Basement. A newlywed couple, Jenna and Tom, bought an old Victorian house with a large, mysterious basement. The previous owners had sealed off the basement with heavy rusted locks and left no explanation. Intrigued by the secrecy, Jenna and Tom decided to investigate. After hours of prying and unlocking, they finally accessed the basement. It was cluttered with old furniture, dusty antiques, and strange objects. Among the items, they found a large, ornate chest. They opened it to find old, faded photographs of people they didn't recognize and a journal filled with cryptic writings and sketches. As they read through the journal, they discovered disturbing accounts of experiments and rituals that were performed in the basement. The last entry detailed a ritual to summon something from the beyond, warning that once it is awakened, it will never rest. Later that night, strange occurrences began, objects moving on their own, cold spots and whispers in the dark. The couple realized that they had inadvertently unleashed something sinister from the basement. The entity grew more aggressive, causing terrifying manifestations and nightmares. Jenna and Tom eventually fled the house, but they could never escape the haunting memories of what they had awakened. Wow. So a lot of good stories right there. But like I said, this one's going to be a short podcast. Didn't really have much to talk about. We'll find some more topics, some better topics to talk about next week. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Y'all have a blessed day, stay safe, and as always, we'll catch you guys on the next adventure.
Saturday.